guys? We're back for our I guess you could call it a part 2 conversation. We might have a part 15 conversation. Go. I just like having these conversations with you and the other people in the community. And as football season ramps up, we're going to get more voices in here. But Gov, you've been always one of my favorites to bring in because I think our theories and the way we think about DFS are always interesting. And you're always willing to bend to different, like, I've always thought like you were a good pretzel of the mind in that way, Gov, where you were always not willing to like bend completely away from your thought process, but you're always willing to hear people out. And I think that allows you to have the best binoculars when you go to the top of the mountaintop.
I will never say that I know everything, but I'm also not someone who I'm always willing to learn and take in information. Like, I'll give you that. I will never say that I know everything. I might be a smart guy, but I don't know everything.
I meant to kind of preface this. Full disclosure, I asked you how much time you had, and I forgot to give you the topics. But I think you're okay with it because basically we're going to talk about the same episode we talked about in part 1. So if you guys haven't went back and watched part 1, please do that. Like and subscribe to the video as well. We really are trying to get to 100 subscribers. I don't know how long it's going to take us. I don't even know. Like, it could take us, 12 years, and me and Gov will still be here because I really do enjoy talking to him. But hopefully you guys did get something out of part 1. We did have quite a few viewers, given that we just released it a couple days ago. But in the time after that, I listened to a podcast I found very interesting, Gov, and I think this would be I shouldn't say that, because it's not a fun topic at all, actually. I think it's a fascinating angle when we think of gambling. So I was listening to a podcast, right? And they were talking about edges in gambling, right? And specifically sports betting more so. So, like, when to bet and how to bet and, like, finding small edges. So, like, let's say Johnny Do Good was going to retire from baseball, on Monday night, and you knew it before anyone else, and so you were able to bet that he would get a single, because they're going to throw him a cupcake ball down the plate. And, like, at what point does that become, hey, that's a bit unfair, right? Or that's a bit kind of preconceived notion, like maybe the book's going to lose, maybe the book should offer terrible odds. Like, at what point are they beholden to us? And the conversation kind of led this way, Gov, and I found it interesting. Someone actually posted on Twitter the night that everyone was doing the Kobe Bryant tributes. Hey guys, bet the under on all the games, right? And he got killed for it. And I'm like, I get it. Like, it's a little bit insensitive, right? To be like, oh, they're honoring this guy who just died. Therefore, everyone's kind of got a heavy heart. No, people are probably not going to spend as much time around shoot around. Oh, and then they're doing these 24-second shot clock violation. So maybe the under does hit. But at what point, so, like, to bring that back to football and management, at what point do we, like, factor in injury as, like, a strategy versus, like, celebrating it? Like, you can say, oh, Deshaun Watson, you can have a political opinion about that, for example, but also have a DFS mindset. I feel like that's the smartest way to go about it, because to bring too much emotion into a decision where you can make money and you can change your own life, I don't know. I feel like we're not always beholden to this, like, moral high ground. You got anything on that, Gov?
No, honestly.
So at what point, basically, do you, like, consider injury, like, or do you be like, or do you never consider it? And
I have gotten to that point where I just don't. Like there's like I do consider injury, but it's because there's a line.
mm-hmm.
At that line, I either completely fade you because I don't trust your injury risk, or I have no care of your injury at all. I can play you as if you're 100% healthy. And that's basically how I treat that line. So it's like, it's weird in that I don't really care about injury, because if I have an inkling that I would not play you for being injured, I would not play you at all. So you have to really be injured.
Okay, but so if a player goes down with an injury, though, aren't we allowed to be like, well, that helped my team, without being like, woo, like, aren't you allowed to be like, yeah, I took a chance that Swift wasn't 100%, and guess what? Swift wasn't 100%, and Jamal Williams did end up getting 20 carries in this game. Therefore, I can be happy about it without being like, oh, I'm celebrating Swift, who might have a hip injury, or like, I just think people. I don't know. I feel like people are bitter when it comes to that. Like, oh, well, you're celebrating injuries. No, we're just accepting them as part of the game. I feel like, anyways.
I mean, in the case of like, yeah, we're playing a backup because we expect him to get more carries because we think the top guy is injured, whereas other people are playing the top guy. And then when we're like, yes, Jamal Williams, like you said, like Jamal Williams, all right, he got the carries because Swift was injured. It's not that we're celebrating Swift's injury. We made a good move not playing a guy who had injury risk.
Right.
If I had done the other thing on the other side, which is what I was saying, it's like, if I play Swift and he gets injured and Jamal Williams gets 20 carries, I'm not hating on anything. Okay, I played Swift, he got injured. Well, that happened.
Yep. I think it's fair, and I know it was kind of a sloppy way to get there, but I think we're going to make really good sloppy joes out of this conversation, because basically the whole thing is trying to figure out what narratives to pay attention to and what not to, and it was a full circle way to get to the Hunt versus Johnson discussion I've been hearing recently. Hunt saying he wants to be traded, and narrative. I do think there is something to paying attention to preseason and some of these reports, because maybe he doesn't get traded, right? Maybe Johnson doesn't become the 4K free square, but or I guess he's 5K because they priced up all running backs smartly, Draftkings at least. But my point is, at least we know he's unhappy, right? So, like, you'll hear shower narratives like, well, Kyler Murray and Hollywood Brown played together in college. Sometimes that means something, sometimes it doesn't. The fact that Hunt wanted to get traded, 3 weeks before the season, it could mean something, it could not mean something. But to ignore the information like, oh, Hunt's better than Johnson, I just think, like, when we look at a small community, which we are, because we only have 60 subscribers, these are like the small edges that we can give people and be like, look, you might be a stay-at-home mom who has to babysit for 12 hours, or a lawyer who has 60 hour days who just wants to listen to a fun podcast. So, like, but I also want to plug in some good information here and there. And I think the Hunt versus Johnson conversation is interesting to monitor, though. Like I mentioned, babysitting. Like, I don't think we have to make declarative statements. I've seen some YouTube videos of like, this is a play in week 1 you should make. I just think that's a very bad bias to have.
Right now, definitely.
Is there anyone that you think for sure is like a good value that you not? I wouldn't even say 100%, but let's say I'll give you 80% sure you're playing this guy. Like, is there one guy that's just like shining to you that, okay, I gotta play this guy at this price?
I mean, there's 2 guys to me that
you don't.
As soon as I went through the prices, I have a running back and a wide receiver.
Yeah, you don't even gotta say their name. I'm just saying in theory. Like, you can't.
There are 2 guys that from what I know from playing DFS of these two players, their price for what they can do, I'm gonna have shares of them on week 1. Like,
Okay.
and like I said, there's a running back and a wide receiver. So like I can give you whichever one it is. And there's an expensive one and a cheap one.
Nice.
Like to be that. Like, so like if you want names, I can give you names, but otherwise I can give you all that stuff.
I'll give you whatever you're comfortable with. I don't want you to have to feel like you have to be a couch and be like, well, I said it was Delvin Cook, so therefore I have to bet $1 lineup with Delvin Cook. Like I know how this rabbit hole happens, both for content creator and the user. And I don't want someone to hold you to something 3 weeks ago. My point was,
I'm going to be doing this. The only way I'm not playing these guys is if they get so injured that they break that line.
Yeah.
And I don't see that happening to either player. Some might see it happening to one of the players. I don't see it happening to either player. So, like, I have no problem telling who it is. Like, I have no problem being in that transparency. So, like, if you want the expensive guy, the guy I am definitely playing week 1, barring some major injury in training camp, is Christian McCaffrey. He is a 9 to 10K player. He is a 25 plus point a game guy, guaranteed. He always has been. Almost every game he's played. Even in like the 2 or 3 games he played last year, he was in the mid to low 20s at worst. And that's without 100-yard games bonus and without touchdowns. So like if he actually gets into a point where he's scoring touchdowns and getting 100 yards rushing or 100 yards receiving or playing an entire season, he will be a solid guy who will end up being a 10K running back. And he's 8,500. So I'll have shares of Christian McCaffrey.
Well, I just want to make this point about Christian McCaffrey too, because I actually think he's the best value on the board because I think he has the highest upside of all the running backs. Like he could outscore any.
He could be the number 1 fantasy scorer of the year, 100%. He could be right up there with the top end quarterbacks scoring 40 touchdowns if he's healthy all year. He definitely can be.
Week 1, right? We're talking DFS.
Yep, he's got Cleveland.
Everyone's going to overrate Cleveland because I feel like Cleveland gets overrated as a defense because they got like fun pass rushing options, right? But how do you slow down pass rushers? You run the ball. 1. 2, Christian McCaffrey is underpriced. And yeah, you could say Johnson may be underpriced if Hunt got traded. Guess what? That's a correlation. And maybe that correlation doesn't make sense in most cases. But if you could get a cheap guy like Gov was talking about with an expensive guy and make it work and still fill the lineup that you like, we talked about that at the end of the first discussion we had. I mean, these things have to be malleable. You can't be locked into an idea. But even if Christian McCaffrey was a wide receiver, I would say he was a really good value at 8,500. That's my point. Because like Adams is 81, Jefferson is 78.
Debo would be a good guy to look at because he's a guy who gets, ideally, if it's like last year, he'll get rushing and receiving work.
Right. That's why I find funny is everyone loves the fact that Debo transitioned from wide receiver to running back. But people don't realize like Christian McCaffrey is pretty much like he made, not that he like invented the position of like, but he perfected it. Like there was a point where David Johnson was really high in that same regard, but Christian McCaffrey took it to another level. Like Draftkings at one point just didn't know how to price that guy. Like they kept raising the price and he just kept outperforming it. And now they, with the injury concern, he's going to be lower owned, which we talked about at the beginning, which it was kind of a nice transition because like injuries do matter and like we're not cheering for them, but they have to factor into your formula. And if they don't, you're being a bad gambler. You're being a bad, predictor. And just like if these players go to training camp and they don't take care of their bodies, they don't get in the ice bath after practice and stuff like that. Like it's that same kind of thing. Maybe you can get away with it when you're younger, but eventually it's going to catch up to you. People say like, "Oh well, I won a contest and I put the 1 o'clock guy in my flex." It's like, yeah, you might have won a 1 o'clock contest, but that's still bad roster management. Like,
Agreed. It's not the smartest thing in the world. It didn't end up mattering in your lineup. Right. It's not the smartest move in the world.
But just how things like happen by chance for the good, they can also happen for the bad too. And like that's the luck variant of it. But like just because me and Gov know that gambling has a clover effect doesn't mean we can't try to put ourselves in the best position. I never try to put a 1 o'clock guy on my flex. Now, to say it's never happened, or I haven't been busy on a Thanksgiving slate and forgot about it, or even a different sport, but like we should be putting ourselves in the best position. And I do think Christian McCaffrey, to go back full circle, is positionless. So like, why not play positionless players? Like why not take chances on, Christian McCaffrey coming not even off an injury, but he has a new quarterback now. And everyone kind of dogs Mayfield, who we don't even know is going to be the starter, but likely, for not passing to running backs. But who did he really pass to that was like a workhorse pass catcher? I can't think of one that he really had because Hunt is a pass catcher, but they didn't use him that way. Like they used him as a secondary option to, so when you're splitting those carries between Chubb and Hunt, it's not the same thing.
Agreed.
And so and then you got to talk about, was that a coaching decision not to throw the running back? So you got all this volatility around Mayfield doesn't throw, to running backs. McCaffrey's coming off major injuries, new coaching staff. Just some people are going to want to stay away from the Browns game for moral reasons, which you could argue that's okay if that's what you want to do. So you might see less stacks of that game. So I just think it's a beautiful spot. Is there any players that you for sure like, unless something crazy happens, I think this price is totally wrong?
I don't think anyone's price is totally wrong. Now, like I said, I haven't. As of right now, there's going to be some training camp injuries still. That's probably going to make someone completely wrongly priced, but I don't think that's happened yet.
Well, why do you think about this? Let me show you an example of what I mean. Like, I'm saying if you did something like this. Yeah, could you make it work? Maybe. But
yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
You could.
With defense and tight end, you could make that work. Yeah, but
yeah, is it good? That's what I'm saying.
Like you have to make that good. Like I'm like, none of those pieces correlate. You're just getting 3 expensive pieces that, again, I don't have projections out to be like whether those are any good, but like Adams is in a really good game environment that I like from week 1. McCaffrey is a player I will be playing. I wasn't sure I was going to have a lot of Debo. But like to make all that fit, you're definitely going to need a cheap tight end, a cheap defense, probably a cheap stack too. Or at least a cheap running back.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you did a Trey Lance with Debo, now you have a stack.
But I'm proving my point that I didn't even mean the stack, and I just feel like a lot of people are going to make that mistake. Because I don't know if you see it, but I see it a lot week 1 where my friend will be like, "Oh, you play Draftkings, 80% of the sports season. I know you watch baseball with the Draftkings mindset. It's week 1. I'm going to build a lineup," and he builds it like he's picking from his home league, and like the Draftkings board is like his home league, drafters board. And he's like, well, I heard Swift is good this year, and I heard, McCaffrey's coming back, and he's not the most expensive guy. And so, like, but building a lineup within a salary is very difficult. Like, if this was easy, guys, people would be winning a lot more money. At like at a higher clip and at a more frequent level. This is not. It's not easy. And the fact that it's not rocket science and it has some stupid elements to it, and like I just think that makes it even harder in some ways because people tend to overthink it. Like people tend to have fun with it in like a way that doesn't make sense. But I guess on the flip side, you should also have fun with it too. I guess that's also kind of my point. It's like you can't build a perfect lineup. I don't think it's possible. Now, 2020 would tell you that this was the optimal lineup after, on Monday morning, but nobody knows a perfect lineup go. I don't think that's possible. Like, I just think we have to embrace the luck, have a little fun, but then listen to a podcast like me and Gov are doing and try to like correlate, try not to put guys that are playing at 1 o'clock in your flex. Give yourself options, give yourself PMR, these type of things.
I mean, those are all good strategies, but yeah.
Well, because
I'm trying to think of what I need to add to this.
I'm just saying,
you basically hit on everything I was going to say.
Sorry, man.
No, you're good. I'm trying to just make sure I don't.
I was just pointing out that,
everything. Yeah.
That like you can say like, oh well, I listened to the Ringer podcast and Kevin Cole told me that Trey Lance was looking good. They're playing a bad Bears team. Why not play Trey Lance? And I didn't even know I stacked it. Like I accidentally stacked it. Like we're gonna see some accidental stacks, but that's just to prove that not all stacks make sense. Like in this lineup, if you really want to play McCaffrey and Adams, you're more likely, probably smarter, to stack it with Brandon Ayuk because he provides so much better of a value. And we're not for sure that Debo's going to be able to repeat,
Well, no, honestly, to be fair, like my first thought in this lineup that you have on screen is, why the heck do you have such an expensive tight end? Like Debo with Lance is fine. There's no reason to have Kyle Pitts in this lineup.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not
like if you're playing now, like I said, if you're playing those three guys, I'm punting at tight end and defense for the first two spots, then maybe a punt running back if I need more value.
Right. I was building this lineup with the mindset that I'm a casual who listens to podcasts on my way to work, and I do a little bit of research, but not much. Kyle Pitts is being talked a lot about, but Gov's right. Like at some point, you can't just handpick all the fancy fun guys that everyone's talking about. People are talking about how Adams has a great rapport with Carr. Well, he probably does, but if you're going to pay for the stack of Lance and Samuel, Adams might not be, make sense. Or maybe he makes sense and you get rid of Pitts, and you try to correlate with a Waller, or you try to, like at least if you're going to pay up for your expensive guys, at least correlate your expensive guys, pay up for a Waller, pay down to a Hunter Renfrow, that type of thing. I guess was my larger point. So any other week one management topics we should hit on?
Let's see. Last week we hit on bankroll. Today, like lineup construction needs to be key because, like I said, like we're talking about, you don't want to just build a dumb lineup. Like I'd like for people to be able to have some chance of winning good money, and you should be playing with correlation. Like think about it from a game perspective. What are the games I like, and then try to get the players from that game. And be smart about it that way. Stack the game, stack the teams. Like if you like that San Francisco-Chicago game, you think it's going to score a lot of points, then sure, go Trey Lance, go Samuel. Then grab some Chicago guy on the other side, Mooney or someone.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Gov. This is a game I will have a piece of. I've already decided that. I don't know what that piece is, and I think it's not intelligent. Whether you think that's because you want to be silly or misinformed, like I'm not saying you're stupid, but I'm saying it's not intelligent to already have such a bias of I'm playing Marlon Mack, or I'm playing, Damian Pierce because he's a rookie, he's gonna explode. But I'll tell you the theory of playing a Houston Texans guy. It's because everyone's going to be paying up for JT, right? Or this idea of JT. I think JT's ownership is going to be really high. But we talked about it in part one. We don't want to correlate two running backs, right? And so I will probably take a lineup where I take a Houston Texans guy who I just think is vastly underpriced. I mean, Marlon Mack, right now out of camp, is perceived to be maybe the starter, and he's cheaper than Johnson, who's the third string back for the Cleveland Browns, who I just brought up moments ago. If Mack is the guy, I just feel like that's kind of how you get different. You look at ownership of high-owned guys, and then you do the opposite of what they would do, and therefore you get some leverage. Now
that's a huge leverage. You do that, and then you immediately don't have to worry about a lot of things in your lineup when it comes to leverage, because that gives you a lot of it.
And I'm not even
especially, and I agree, JT would probably be highly owned.
I'm not even saying do Mac. Maybe you do Brandon Jordan, the tight end.
Yeah, playing Houston players when Indy and Taylor are going to be highly owned that's not a bad move. That is a way of getting leverage. The key, I would say, with that is you don't have to do that with every piece of your lineup. You do that with, you get 9 players. Leverage 3, maybe 4 of them. And then try to fit in just the best plays around it, even if everyone seems to be playing those plays.
Yeah, you know me, I love my metaphors. So if me and you went to a Thanksgiving dinner, right? And the premise was everyone brings a dish to pass, right? Let's say I made the best green bean casserole you ever heard about, and you just heard it was so good from all friends group. But you don't like green bean casserole. But you're not gonna then wait for me at the door and then spill it all over myself and tell me that it smells terrible. You just wouldn't eat it. There are plenty of players that I wish I could get into a lineup that I like for week 1 that I'm not going to be able to play. And it might be because of salary. It might be because of instruction. It might be because I missed something in my research. The goal isn't to fill up on everything we like. In fact, I would actually say do the opposite. Find the things that you really want at this buffet, at this potluck dinner that you're gonna have, and then build around what fits at that point. Because to say oh well, I think Adams is gonna have a good year, I have to have him in my lineup, and then you start making these declarative statements, then you feel bad. I mean, that happens to content creators, but I think it even happens to friend groups or even our mindsets if we look at this stuff too much,
Agreed.
I love Trey Lance this year. Is this the week to play Trey Lance though? I don't know. I still got to wait on more information. You know what I'm saying? But let's say Daniel Jones got injured and now his backup is playing, and it's minimum price. Well, then he becomes maybe a better value than Trey Lance, but maybe he's not a runner. So that for Trey Lance's value would still hold. Or maybe you're just worried that Trey Lance doesn't have rapport. You can make cases for and against any player you want. All these guys are talented. They're NFL professionals. And we're going to have natural biases, but don't build in a bias 3 weeks before the season because we already have so many natural biases. Let the people behind the curtain a bit go. When we talk about biases, what bias do you believe in? Like, what narratives do you believe in? What biases? Like, is there anything that you wish you could shake going into week one that you know that you do for football that you just kind of, it's not like it's that mosquito itch that you just wish would go away, but you keep scratching it before bed sometimes. And you're like, God, I know this is bad, but I do it.
To be honest, I don't know of anything like that right now. Like, I don't really like nitpick my process that much when it comes to football. I take a good amount of time. If anything, I wish I didn't. I have an actual job that I have to do, so I'm not able to actually be here Sunday mornings before football lock.
Interesting.
Usually.
Let me deep dive that for a second. Do you think that helps you or does that hurt you?
I think that hurts me. I know it hurts me. Like, I have to have like maybe 5 minutes to check inactives, and then I have to try to like adjust to that on the fly, not near a computer or anything where I can do any kind of research. Whereas most other or all other players, they're getting those inactives an hour and a half for lock.
Mm-hmm.
So like they have an hour plus to adjust to those inactives, adjust to new projections, and see what's going to happen. And I don't really have that time to do that because I'm at work. I've tried, like, and my job is not one where I can take Sundays off. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Ooh, yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's just not one I can take Sundays off being a cook. Like, everyone comes out on football Sunday.
I feel like this conversation, even going back to part one, and now we're having it again for week one, and I would even like to do a follow up to this as like almost like our preseason go where we like each week we can get closer to actually building a lineup and we take the people through the process, almost like we're doing a best ball draft round by round. Now, but I've been driving this beautiful car asking you all kinds of questions, putting you on the spot because I forgot to give you the rundown. Is there any questions or topics that you thought we should hit on today? Like you can ask me, you can take the wheel and do some donuts and burnouts if you want and try to throw me off if you want to. But is there any other like topics that I'm missing?
A couple, but I'll talk to you those off air because I think it'll be a good idea for another podcast another time.
Another podcast.
Right. But like for today, I kind of like where you were going with it today. Now, like if you want, I'll give you my other player because like I did say I had two earlier. So like let's talk about my other player, the cheap guy I was definitely looking at for week one. And maybe I have too much of a bias because this is a guy I'm playing because I love this game. It's one of the games I would like to stack.
Mm-hmm.
Afternoon game from week one. And that is the KC Arizona game. And with everything that's in place, with no DeAndre Hopkins, with maybe no Marquise Brown, Rondale Moore at 4K is he's going to be highly owned. Unlike Christian McCaffrey, Rondale Moore is going to be highly owned.
I don't think he will be.
I'll tell you why. If he is one of the starting two wide receivers in Arizona in that high scoring game environment, people are going to be on Rondale Moore. He's going to have some popularity as opposed to people who will be off of Christian McCaffrey coming off of injury and other such things, and him being expensive.
I don't think so because of this guy right here, Gov. I'll give the viewers a bit of a sneak peek. The Kadarius Toney, I feel like is 4K, 100, so just 100 more, and he's going to get so much steam. He already has, and so like he plays at the same time. People don't want to wait. Like I think your Moore take is brilliant. I just he's going to be single digit ownership. I think. And I think it's brilliant. Like you might have just gave the people the greatest nugget you could have ever given them. Because I actually agree with everything you say. We actually know this guy named Jay, who is also in kind of our friends group for the NFL, who loves more. And I always say, well, I don't know who loves more, me or you. I've always liked this guy, even going back to Penn State, man. And I just think like with the Tony and Jones stack, that combination of being so cheap, I think this play is brilliant. I could see him coming in at 6% ownership.
See, I think you have that 100% wrong.
I hope
everyone's going to play the higher totaled KC Arizona game. Just looking at the Vegas totals, because that's what people go off of. Like the higher totaled game is going to be KC Arizona. Everyone's going to want to play Mahomes and Kyler and have Rondale as a bring back if you're stacking or whatever, or Rondale with Kyler and Juju or Kelsey as the bring back. That's going to be the highly popular one. There's going to be no ownership on that New York Giants game. Like, you need to reverse it. Tony is going to be a great leverage play that's going to come in at like 6%.
See, I would agree with you. Maybe you're right. But I would definitely agree with you if we were talking week 10, like where the hardcores really have to grind their teeth at the dentist. But I think I just think week 1 has so many casuals who are going to flip on a 20-minute podcast, and they're already talking about Dable and how he's going to change the offense and how they have, they're going to be fast-paced like the Bills, and people saw the Bills kind of come out of nowhere. And so, like, I just feel like this narrative's building, man, like a tornado. And it could work out, but I just feel like everyone,
I'll say that if that's happening, it is 100% being steamed by people in podcasts. Because I'm not hearing that anywhere from anyone I talk to. I've heard of all the stuff with the new coaching, but no one's that high on New York where they're going to have New York guys over Arizona or Kansas City guys in the same way. Like, will there be sharps who will have some pieces of that game because it is low owned and good leverage? Yes. Am I saying that you shouldn't have any Daniel Jones, Kadarius Toney? No. But it is not going to be the popular game. And I don't believe that a bunch, like, it would take every single podcast talking about the Giants as if they want to be the number one play for them to be steamed where they're the better play. Like, in the afternoon, right there, the other 3 games are going to be more owned than that Giants game. People are going to want that Green Bay, Minnesota game. People are going to want that Vegas versus the Chargers game, the Raiders-Chargers game. People are going to want the KC Arizona games. Those teams are going to have huge totals. The Giants game versus Tennessee is probably going to have a low total.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not, maybe it'll be smart to bet overs and maybe it'll be smart to stack that game. I don't know. That is something I will make decisions on much closer to week 1. I'm not going to have a bias on it right now. I'm not going to set my foot in stone on stuff I don't have any time, like I haven't put enough time into, and I don't, like, it is not the time to tell you to bet the over-unders on that kind of stuff.
In fact, I think if you do, it should be only for entertainment purposes only. And I'm that way with drafting too. I think there is never a perfect time to draft, but I think you either do your best ball drafts at the beginning of the release or near the end of the initial preseason run. But another reason I think more is just a brilliant play by you is everyone's talking about Sky Moore and his potential with Hill not being on the Chiefs, and he's cheaper than Moore. And like in these best ball drafts, his ADP is skyrocketing. So, like, I just feel like Moore is in that sweet spot, and I think you hit it, Gov. He's cheaper than Tony, and he's more expensive than Sky Moore, who everyone wants to, like sometimes these people, they want something to happen. Like, I know for a long time people wanted Laviska Shenault to be something, right? Because his highlight tape was really awesome. And it's like, yeah, but he hasn't been. So at some point, taking Gabriel Davis is just smart, you know? Sometimes just taking that guy that you know is gonna be consistent is the way to do it, even if it isn't sexy. Unless you want to be that casual guy who just plays the sexy lineup and hopes that it hits one of the 17 weeks. And that's perfectly fine too, you know? I know a guy back home, Gov, who said, like, I'm playing, I know the kid from, I'm trying to think of his name, it slips my mind. The Saints tight end from last year, Adam Troutman.
Yes, Troutman.
So Troutman went to a school near me in northern Michigan, or near where I grew up, anyways. And so, like, my friends group was like, I'm playing Troutman, right? And if you would have played Troutman sometimes last season, you would have, you would have splashed, and sometimes you would have spiked. And so it's just like, you can say this is good or bad, but it also can be lucky. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know what's going to happen. So Gov's right. To declare something's for sure going to happen already is silly. But I do think that is a good conversation on value. One thing I'll say that I do as a bias that I find that I do it, Gov, and maybe it's bad. I don't look at the middle range of quarterbacks a lot. So I will usually pay up, or I'll pay all the way down for my quarterbacks. I don't know why I do this, but it's just one of my biases that I tend to do. So I'm like, I want to build two different lineups, right? So I'll take a high-end quarterback, give me Lamar Jackson, give me Kyler Murray, and then I'll build like a Trey Lance one, or whatever value I like. Jared Goff, even I've done, not even from a homer. I guess that seems homerish, so maybe I shouldn't use that one. I'll use like a Mac Jones in the playoffs. I did that, this year. So like, I tend to do that. I guess that's a bad bias that I have, just to kind of come full circle. But you were talking about another podcast. I think if we keep these relatively shorter, and then we come in with some good information, and we get out, and then we produce more of them throughout the week, that's the way to do it, Gov. Is there anything else you want to bring to the people as any closing thoughts before we bring them on part 3, probably next week?
No, not right now. I think we can save it for part 3.
Yeah, so part 1,
maybe next week, maybe later this weekend. We'll see what we get to.
So we talked, just to wrap up. So we talked about, in part 1, we talked a lot about like bankroll management and contests that you should enter, and then like kind of the theory of like what the do's and don'ts of like how to attack from I want to get a little bit better at this. I hope we hit on some kind of roster construction ideas. And so now we can kind of merge the two together in a third podcast, or like as we continue to grow, it's just like the preseason, eventually the starters play a little bit more. Some teams don't play any starters. So like, we still want to keep that free flowing, you can ask us anything questions, but like having this kind of structure and like walking you guys through it, whether we're right or wrong doesn't really matter, because when we talk about process, we're helping each other, and hopefully symbiotically we're helping you as well. So I want to thank Gov. We kept this to 45 minutes. He's got to eat dinner with his family. So I'm going to let him go now, and take care, guys. Hopefully we can all eat in week 1. Take care. Good night.